What about you, Jeremy? Are you doing the Omer count without shaving?
I always don't shave during the Omer.
So now it's even easier for you.
Yeah, I did cut my hair before Pesach by myself. So that's why it looks like this.
Mm-hmm. Martin, I see you also are doing the Omer count.
You're muted, but I will do your words for you. I did not do the Omer count. I shaved last week, but it grows this fast.
No, now you're mute.
Hello, Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov.
Good to see you guys.
What's
Jeremy.
amazing right now is you can see Alisa's shadow. But now you see Alisa, but before you just saw her shadow against the wall.
Jeremy, thank you for being such a good bouncer on Friday.
Oh, it was so great. I blocked the Zoom bombers.
Yeah.
One of them had the name Alex Soros.
Wow. Creative.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Soros seems to be the hardest word, you know?
Yeah.
How'd you block them?
We have a waiting room, and I didn't let them in. For the Alex Soros, I kicked him out immediately because I was like, there's no way Alex Soros is actually joining our. And if he was, he wouldn't write his name was Alex Soros. And the others had like weird names, and I was just like, please tell me your actual name. I wrote to them, and they didn't, so I just didn't let them in.
Right.
Have you been facing a lot of Zoom bombing the last events?
We had one bad case, and like, what was it, 3 weeks ago, Martin?
Yeah.
And since then, we've had the waiting room, and we haven't had a problem. The truth is, they can't get in. So what does it matter?
Yeah.
I
Hi,
saw that
Ruben. How are
Facebook
you?
is trying to compete with Zoom.
I'm
now.
fine, how are you?
Good, good.
So, I don't know, we should wait. You want to wait, Jeremy, a little bit more?
We can, or we can get started.
Yeah, let's go start. It's late already. So, just before starting and letting the word to Jeremy and Rebecca to do some Torah teaching today, I just I was thinking over the Shabbat about the fact that Yom Ha'atzmaut is coming next week, and it's a really strange festivity for me as a Jew in the diaspora. And I wanted to raise a little bit the question for whoever is willing to share a little bit today about you as a Jew living in the diaspora, what is the role that Israel is playing today in your life? So knowing as well that in this Havdallah every week, we are having people a little bit from all around. We have people from the States, from Germany, me from Spain. I think it will be amazing if you're willing to join. I'm not sharing yet anything live on Facebook, so feel free to talk as a small community. We'll start to share later when Jeremy will or Rebecca will do the Torah teaching today. Rebecca is doing today, amazing. So if anyone wants to share, Ruben, maybe?
I didn't prepare anything, but you can read my Zionism op-ed next week.
You want to explain a little bit about?
It's a tough question. Basically, it's like on the way that I lived in Israel and I experienced this country more than just 2 weeks at Tel Aviv beaches. I've learned how connected I'm to so many people living there without knowing them, like Jews and non-Jews also, that how this whole country is based on Jewish culture and the culture which I've grown up, that also even non-Jews have adopted a lot of this culture, that I'm feeling home away from home. And this is what Israel is for me. And also that Israel is on some ways like doing a process, a democratic process every day again, like coming hopefully not to free elections, shows how difficult the situation is, and that that's just a country with mistakes like every other country, and this is how we should treat this country, not like a special country, like it's a normal country, but a special country with love.
Mm-hmm. True. And as well, I was wondering.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mikey.
I was wondering, like many times, I feel there's kind of like different visions in between, like the European jewelry and the American jewelry. And I know you, Jeremy, you have been living both in the States and in Europe. So I wanted to ask you, like, if you want to share a little bit, if you think there is this kind of duality in how, like, Jews in the States relates to Israel and European Jews relate to Israel. If for you, since you have been living in Europe, there's kind of a shift on that or not? Or have you noticed any kind of difference?
It's a really interesting question. I think what I find in both places is that there tends to be a generational gap, both in the US as well as in Europe, as to how people relate to Israel. I think the gaps are not the same. They're not completely analogous to one another. But I think people my age versus my parents' age in the US, as well as I think, not to speak for Ruben and his parents' generation, but I think people of Ruben's generation in Germany who I've spoken to about Israel feel differently about it than their parents' generation, and that there are big gaps there that are, that I think is the most interesting sort of piece, the generational gaps and what that says about how we're raised Jewish. And I know my father is tempted to jump in now, but I'm going to hold. No, he's shaking his hand. Good. I was going to say, we'll talk later and you can tell me why I'm wrong.
Amazing. So if anyone else, feel free if you would like to join with us. I see Martin, Alisa.
The question was how we stand to Israel, or?
No, the question will be more like, what's the role you think Israel plays in your life today, as knowing that you're a Jew living in the diaspora?
Wow, I mean, I'm not saying anything without my lawyer. No, just kidding. Actually, I personally, I have to say, I feel these days sometimes quite old-fashioned because I feel a very strong emotional tie to Israel. And sometimes it surprises me also in the younger generation that I feel that there is a big, how to say, growing apart. I somehow understand it because I grew up a lot in the 90s with like Yitzhak Rabin and all these things. So I always felt a strong connection, and maybe a young, more left-leaning American Jew nowadays sees that there is this big friendship with Trump and Netanyahu, and it alienates the person maybe from this relationship. So it's probably hard these days to be an American Jew when you have these Trump-Netanyahu ties like this, you know. It's probably you perceive Israel different than I perceive it. I have to say very openly, a very strong emotional bond to Israel.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think I can totally relate to what you just said, Martin. This fact of growing up, and like I do have as well a very emotional tie to Israel. But sometimes when I see like today's government, how it relates to some like kind of other governments, it's really hard to find this kind of balance of saying like, especially like I think for me the inflection, big inflection point toward my relation with Israel when I saw Netanyahu going to France saying like all the Jews in France come to Israel, Israel is your land. And I think for me it was a huge like inflection point. I don't know if anyone else will feel to share any thoughts. If not, please, Rebecca.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for the question. It's very appropriate actually to think about it now because we have Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut, the Day of Remembrance, and Israel's Independence Day coming up this week. So yeah, it's definitely something that even though maybe we're not really going to gather for that, or we'll gather online for that as we've been doing, it's a good thing to think about. A brief thought for tonight So tonight is actually my Jewish birthday. And it is the 2nd of ER. Thank you, everybody. So today and yesterday was Rosh Chodesh. It was the beginning of the month of ER. And tonight begins the 2nd day of ER, which is my birthday. And besides for it being...
And tomorrow is her English
and
birthday.
tomorrow, yeah, anyway. So the cool thing about this... Thank you, Margarita. The cool thing about having this birthday is that it also falls out on a really special day of Sfirat HaOmer, the time that we're in now, that we were talking about before. And this is the day of the Omer that we think really intensively about the Sfira of Tiferet. It's Tiferet Shebet Tiferet, which means that we're thinking a lot about the attribute of beauty, which many understand to be also about thinking about balance and also about thinking about compassion. How can we actually see the beauty of somebody else just as we see the beauty of ourselves? How can we balance what it means to give to others and also hold our own identities strong? And that's Tiferet. And so tonight is a time where we start to really, really get into this concept of balance, beauty, and compassion. And I heard a story recently about somebody who was finding herself taking this really deep sense of Tiferet and was feeling challenged by that. And that person was saying, well, how can I move to Tiferet? The Sfirat Omer, of course, is a process. And just the previous week, we were focusing on Gvura, on strength, which is a really, really intense attribute to focus on in and of itself. How do we strengthen ourselves? How do we set our boundaries? How do we feel powerful in ourselves? And to move from there to this kind of different space where we're supposed to be welcoming in like two very different sorts of personality traits. Like on one hand, we're supposed to be integrating all the strength that we got from last week when we were focusing on that. And on the other hand, we're also supposed to be integrating what we focused on 2 weeks ago with chesed, with loving kindness, which is something totally different. It's about giving. It's about being loving and thinking about generosity and empathy. And now we're supposed to kind of integrate these two and bring them into balance, being for myself and being for somebody else. And how can we do that? How can we find a balanced way to do that? Sometimes, especially now, it's like, I just want to be only for myself. I just want to hold on to all this strength that I got in terms of knowing who I am and being really set on my boundaries, especially when the world outside is a world I don't even recognize. So why would I want to integrate back that element of giving to people? Like why, how and why? And so the answer to this question, it's not the answer, but it's one answer to this question that I heard, is that it's not a time where we're supposed to bring these two into balance. It's a time when both Gvura and Chesed show up in a super intense way at the same time. So during this week, the meditation or the spiritual focus on Tiferet is about recognizing that we as human beings are super strong, super confident, have all the ability to be disciplined, set up our lives as we need to set them up, listen to ourselves, listen to our instincts in terms of doing that. And at the same time, we should also be channeling our instincts to be kind and to give outward and to be loving. And the two are showing up intensely. And usually when two things show up super intensely, it's like, there's gotta be a conflict. But this period of time is saying, no, there can be two things true at the same time. This is actually something that I learned about a year or two ago. Sometimes Jeremy and I have arguments. Sometimes one of us wants to be strong and set certain boundaries in terms of how we live our lives. It's probably me. And sometimes the other one wants to be the most giving and the most inclusive and just give endlessly and like make it possible for everyone else to have exactly what they need without boundaries. That's usually you. And we're both right. We live together and we have these arguments and these two instincts come into conflict, but they're both right. We all need to set our boundaries and be strong in this way. And at the same time, we also need to be giving and loving and empathetic and kind. We need to be kind to ourselves. We need to be kind also to the people around us who are, you know, maybe not in our immediate vicinity at the moment, but who are experiencing lots of different things and different challenges. And those instincts don't line up. They don't line up, but they both have to be true at the same time. And that's the journey that we're going on this week. That's the spiritual challenge. So you're invited to think more about that or ask any questions if it doesn't make sense. But yeah, that's tonight. That's the intention of tonight. So without further ado, on that note,
I'll invite everyone to gather their Havdallah supplies.
supplies. Unless they are a surprise, which they shouldn't be because they're the same every week. But
Mikey and Sam, I expect to see a full bottle of wine, as is your minhag.
or something.
No, it's a minhag already. I don't.
Wine or a full bottle is the minhag.
Full bottle is a minhag. That's true. That's
Wine
true.
or something is
So, as per usual, Havdallah is an introductory prayer followed by 4 short blessings, one over the wine or drink, another over the sweet-smelling spices, a third over the multi-wicked flame. Why don't you do that? And then a final blessing separating that which is holy from that which is regular. Cool. So without further ado, I encourage you all to unmute yourselves and we'll begin.
Jeremy, I have just one question. We're out of Havdallah candle. We just have like this incense. Do you think it will work?
Do you have any regular candles?
We are waiting to be delivered soon.
Do you have do you have 2 lighters?
Yes.
use 2 lighters.
Use 2 lighters and have the 2 flames come to create one.
Amazing. Thank you.
No problem.
All right.
Full disclosure, Rebecca and I have definitely done Havdallah at a concert that we may or may not have walked to while still Shabbat.
With 2 lighters borrowed from other people.
Yeah.
Facebook Live.
Here over here, maybe some other
Okay,
material.
okay.
Anyway, okay. Nay al Yeshua Eftach velo eftach Yaziv
I want to get it to do
Yeshua. Shame Adonai. La 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 la
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamabdil ben kodesh ben Yisrael Ami ben Yom HaShvi'i ben Yoshet Yemei Maaseh Baruch atah Adonai Hamabdil ben kodesh
Shavua tov.
Shavua tov.
Shavua tov.
Wherever you are in the world, in Europe, wherever, may you find lots of strength and lots of righteousness, and may that create lots of beauty in the craziness that is your lives.
Amen.
Shavua tov.
Amen.
Oh, back to you.
Shavua tov. And Mazal tov, Rebecca.
Yes.
Mazel
Happy
tov,
birthday.
Rebecca.
Hope to see you all next week.
Okay, Shavua tov. Bye.
Bye.